Hello and welcome to Team Franco Bodybuilding Podcast. Hoping you guys are doing awesome out there. And you know it. And you know I dig it the most when you're getting it done both in and out of the gym. All right. So I have a lot of topics in queue where it's technically approaching the off season, sort of, or the holiday season. But I want to wrap up the little series that I started a few weeks ago, Bodybuilding for Dummies, where the first part I talked about weight training and give you some cues and how to approach your training for the most optimal approach for bodybuilding. And then the previous week or last week, I covered the diet. Some, again, factors, cues, tips where I think could be super beneficial to get you on the right page, to build up that consistency, that motivation, that discipline as far as losing body fat, knowing that you have the muscle to compete. So therefore, I wanted to talk about one more factor, and it's the you versus you factor. You probably, if you're familiar with my post on Instagram, social media, and all that, you know I'm a big proponent about you versus you. And I'm going to get into that, and I'm going to hold it down with my case as far as you versus you. But truth of the matter, when I first started out bodybuilding a long time ago, at the age of 19, and then did a number of shows in my 20s, it wasn't about you versus you. It was more or less a way for me to still be competitive because I was a high school, college baseball player, and that came to an end. So I put my energy into weight training only because, I was weight training, grew up with my brother weight training, all that stuff. He competed, yada, yada, yada. So it was a competitive outlet where I needed it, something to focus on. And I became good at it as far as my body responding, doing what was necessary back then before the internet, training properly, eating properly, not getting too fat, trying to push the diet. And it just so happened with fairly good genetics, I was winning a lot of bodybuilding shows. Then as my career as a bodybuilder continued, I put more competitiveness on it, more stress on me. Where when I discovered the OCB, and then eventually learning you can win a pro card, well, obviously that was my goal. But when you zoom out, it still was the beginning phases of you versus you. And I'm going to explain this in a second. Because obviously when I first started competing, I just did it as a competitive outlet. Then I got attracted to it, saw the progress, saw how my body was responding. Therefore, the competitive outlet of wanting to win a pro card became unknowingly that I had to get better to win my pro card. You see what I did there? Not thinking about it, where it was you versus you at my young age, my late 20s, my early 30s, and all that stuff. But ultimately, that's what it is. Because if I would have tried to win my pro card or thinking I should win my pro card when I was competing in my mid-20s, there's no way in how I would have. Now, yes, people have gotten better, bigger, faster, stronger, more competitive, but I just didn't have the physique. I was winning shows, but when bodybuilding was getting bigger and bigger with social media and everything, building up, it was getting more difficult. So I knew that I needed to give myself more time. I knew I had to train harder. I know I had to diet harder. And yes, it was to be competitive for this goal of winning a pro card, but I had to look better than I did even 10 years earlier. And that comes with time. You've heard me talk about that, where, some people can win their pro cards at their first show, depending on the situation. And I'm going to get into that in a little bit. But ultimately, I was so focused on the competitiveness of wanting to winning my pro card, but still I was conscious enough that I had to bring a better physique. And that's what brings me to this. Once you have everything in play, your diet, your nutrition, your sleep, your training, pushing yourself with enough muscle, I think the sooner that you can focus you versus you, you're going to have more success. Because in today's day and age with social media, it can be a bitch. It can be a mind fuck. It can drive you nuts by searching out other competitors, seeing what they're doing, and just looking for it. Where if you can detach yourself and just literally concentrate day to day, your activities, your training, your diet, and live life to the fullest, you're going to have more success on the competitive stage. I believe more success in life and everything else that comes with it, because it's going to lower your anxiety levels. It's going to lower your cortisol levels. You're going to have more production both in and out of the gym. Now, why do I always say you versus you now? And obviously, as a coach for all these years, I've matured as a coach. I'll be honest. When I first started training people, win. But then my spectrum of athletes have gotten wider, bigger as far as diversity. And I've become more in tune with them. And I've learned, not only for myself, where I was learning it's not you, that it is you versus you back then, but also working with so many athletes. And I have also learned from them, when they are not hyper-focused on winning or hyper-focused on other people, they're having more success. So that's why I'm saying I matured as a coach. And this is my approach and my philosophy. Now, yeah, some of these coaches and teams are out there are wackadoos, where that's all they focus on. They don't care what they do to their athletes. They throw the kitchen sink. And I've talked about maybe, I sprinkled in a couple times this year that some of these teams are hurting their athletes and they don't give a shit. They only care about raising someone's arm up, winning a pro show or a pro card, not realizing that some of the people that they're hurting. And I hear it. I can't disclose it, but I hear it. My philosophy is not to go in that direction, throwing the kitchen sink. My philosophy is you versus you, where if you competed before, you want to beat that look. If you never competed before, you want to look your all-time best and that you belong on stage. And it's a continuous evolving of just getting better. And that's why bodybuilding is a beautiful thing. And I think if you can have that approach, have that philosophy yourself, you're going to have more fun, you're going to be more excited, and you're going to have a good time, and you're going to see those improvements. Now, why it is you versus you? Some of my bullet points, well, obviously when you step on stage, there's no offense or defense, right? You're not trying to block or catch a ball or throw a pass or hit a ball. It's just you up there. And everything that you've done up until that point is what you can control, mostly. So therefore, you can't compare yourself to anyone else. That's point number one. Point number two, you don't know who's going to show up, who's going to be standing around you. And you've heard me say this before. You can enter a show, be the best one, but the 4 or 5 other people in your height class could be terrible, right? They could look their all-time best, but maybe they're just not meeting the criteria, or you do look better, so you can win. And vice versa. You can look at your all-time best, not win, because you have that one person that does look better. You compete again the following week, and you can win. So there's a lot of flip-flopping around. There's a lot of mishmashing of not being so hyper-focused on who is going to be standing next to you, how the judges are going to perceive you that day, because a different judging panel may like you. Whatever. I know it's tough to hear this, but it's the truth. That's why it's you versus you, focusing on what you can control. Now, I've heard stories, I have these people that reach out to me for coaching, and they'll say, oh, can you send me pictures from last year's show? I'm like, all right, here's a link. And they'll like eye them up thinking that these same people are going to show up. Well, you have no idea who's going to show up. You have no idea how many people are going to show up. That's why you just got to say, fuck it, I don't care. You pick the show date that fits your needs, to give yourself enough time to prepare to look your best for that one single moment that year. Because again, when you compete that one time, It's just one day. If you have the attitude like, yep, I'm going to keep on going, getting better, that's you versus you attitude in which you're going to constantly get better. Don't let it dictate yourself. Don't let it define you. And I think that is the one problem, because people will say, well, last year I got fourth. I got to come in, third or better to be a success. Well, to my points earlier, maybe you got fourth out of 8 people, or maybe you got fourth out of 4. Maybe there were 3 other people that were just really phenomenal. Maybe the judges favored these other looks. I can go on and on. So that's why placements itself, trying to improve a placement, is not really relative, because you have no idea how many other people you're competing with, or how they look, or all the other little factors. So that's something that you need to get out of your head and literally be hyper-focused on what you are bringing that particular show. I know it's hard to hear, but it's the truth. You got to focus on your improvements, what you are bringing to the table, and that is what you can control. Now, it's a journey, guys. I mean, that's what it is. You versus you is a journey. You're not, yes, you are being compared to someone else on stage, but there's no offense or defense. And I think as soon as you enter that into your head, as soon as you can make that register when you're starting your bodybuilding journey, you're going to have more success. You're always learning. And that's the beautiful thing, And I joke around, when I have clients that stick with me for a year, 2 years, 3 years, they're winning their pro cards. It's because, 1, they're sticking with it. 2, I think I'm a good coach and we can learn from what we did previous years. And 3, they're driven to constantly get better. And it's not necessarily winning, but they're constantly fighting you versus you, of wanting to improve. And then so happens that when they win a show, that's part of the process. It's not the other way around, that they're training to win. They're training to get better, and they get awarded their pro card, or winning a pro show, or coming in first place in a novice division, whatever the case may be. And ultimately, when I work with people, that's it. That's my goal as a coach. It's not saying, oh, win or die. Because my goal for you, or your goal for yourself, if you're coaching yourself, or if you have a different coach, is to focus on wanting to get better and do what's necessary that your body can handle in the moment, rather than throwing the kitchen sink. Because it's no offense or defense. You want the attitude of outworking other people. Yeah. If that motivates you, that gives you the discipline for you to stay on point, I'm all for it. But show day comes, you got to learn to let go. You follow your script, your timing of meals, your pump-up schedule, all that stuff, but you got to learn to let it go, guys. I mean, that's the hardest thing. That's the biggest F-bomb about bodybuilding, is that you can do everything in your power right. You can nail it, but someone still can beat you. And as soon as you accept that and let go of that possible stress, thinking, oh, shit, I could do everything possible, and then not win, it sucks. I mean, I had that mentality years ago where, it's like, oh, if I don't win, what am I going to do? But obviously the last few times I stepped on stage over the last decade, I changed my attitude, and my preps were so much better. They were more enjoyable, pushing myself, being hungry. It didn't bother me, because ultimately I was doing what was necessary within my capability at the moment to beat myself the previous year. And that is something that takes time. Now, some people may not acquire that, They could just be searching and wanting to win that pro card, looking for certain shows, thinking that it may be smaller, a better opportunity, whatever the case may be. It is what it is. Everyone's different. We all have different fingerprints. But if you want to do this for more than one show, having the attitude of focusing you versus you, not paying attention to anyone else, having a good time, getting excited because this is something that you can control that's going to actually help your body in the longevity, you're going to have all the success. That I can promise. And I think that is something that the younger generation needs to hear. Or if you're just starting out and you're influenced by going to a show, realizing that all shapes and sizes are going to be on stage. I mean, some people, you may watch a show, they don't fit the criteria. You're like, oh, what are they doing up there? I was guilty of that. But then when you learn their story, then you're like, wow, they're using it as a platform. Now, take it, if you're a hardcore competitor, you may be like, well, they don't belong up there. But it is what it is. They lost 100 pounds. They built up their body, even though they don't fit the criteria for figure or pick any division. But they still are using this as motivation to better themselves. And they're probably inspiring other people. That's the stories that we don't hear all the time when we look at, stage photos and all that stuff. And obviously the person who wins, you don't know their story. Maybe they've been competing for 20 years, and they finally won after all those fighting and grinding away. Or maybe it was their first show. You still have no idea. They have great genetics. They trained their asses off for 20 years but never thought about competing. I have plenty of clients over the years who've done that. They're like, where did they come from? Well, they just never thought about stepping on stage. But that type of person has always been you versus you because they didn't need the stage to show off. They were just constantly wanting to get better. So, a little long-winded. Just wanted to wrap up the bodybuilding for dummies, and really not saying you're a dummy if you're not thinking this way, but I think you will be smart once you do. Now, obviously, if you guys have any questions or concerns, interested in coaching, dig my philosophy, love to hear from you. fitfranco@verizon.net. Check out my socials, and I'm going to be coming out with some cooler podcasts in the future. If you guys ever want to hear anything that I haven't touched upon, or you want to see if I talked about it, obviously search it out, subscribe. I'll talk to you next time. Take it easy, guys.